The camera glides down a narrow corridor, just wide enough for one man to crouch through. A gloved hand brushes against cold steel. A faint flashlight flickers. Then, click. A door unlatches. And there it is. A vault buried deep under the heart of Antwerp, Belgium. 48 steel deposit boxes stand like soldiers in a silent cathedral of money, each one crammed with diamonds worth more than a lifetime of work. The time, 2:47 a.m. The date, February 15th, 2003. Security cameras hum quietly, but no red lights blink. They'd been blinded. Inside, 4 men move like ghosts. No shouting, no panic, just rhythm. One pries a box open. Another counts stones under a flashlight. A third checks his watch. It's over in less than 2 hours. And by sunrise, $100 million in diamonds, gold, and cash are gone. Without a single alarm, without a single trace, without a single clue. And there was only one thing left behind. Half-eaten sandwiches. Yeah, this really happened. And somehow, they almost got away with it. But to understand how a small group of thieves pulled off what the police called the heist of the century, we have to rewind back to the man who made the impossible look easy. Cobblestone streets, diamond shops lined up like glass jewelry boxes, a place where billions of dollars move every day, yet it feels like a quiet European postcard. This is the Antwerp Diamond District, a square mile so secure it's patrolled by cameras, guards, and private detectives 24 hours a day. They call it the square mile of security. To walk into that vault, you'd have to pass 10 layers of protection. Infrared sensors, seismic detectors, heat sensors, magnetic fields, combination locks, steel doors, and private codes known only to clients. It was, on paper, unbreakable. But that didn't stop Leonardo Notarbartolo. He was charming, always in a suit. The kind of guy who'd make you feel safe just by shaking your hand. To most people in Antwerp, he was a businessman, an Italian diamond dealer who rented a small office just a few floors above the vault. But underneath that smooth exterior, he was a thief. And not just any thief. He was a professional planner, part of an elite group from Turin known in the underground as the School of Turin. They were old-world criminals, precise, patient, and allergic to violence. They believed in artful theft. And Antwerp, that was their masterpiece waiting to happen. What makes this story unreal isn't that they robbed the vault, it's how normal it looked while they were getting ready to. For months, Leonardo walked the same street every morning, carrying coffee in one hand and small talk in the other. He became friends with shop owners, waved at guards, and smiled for the cameras. He even kept real business records, fake invoices, real stones, clean paperwork. He belonged there. By the time the vault managers saw him, he wasn't a stranger. He was part of the ecosystem, the kind of man nobody questioned. And that's the first rule of Leonardo's world. The best disguise is routine. Imagine it, a vault buried 2 floors underground behind a 3-ton steel door. Every inch of it protected by systems designed by some of the best engineers in Europe. A heat sensor to detect human presence, IR cameras that can spot movement in pitch black, a magnetic field on the doorframe so even a fraction of movement would trigger the alarm. And the final touch, a lock with 100 million possible combinations. Every journalist, cop, and diamond dealer said the same thing. Breaking into that vault, you'd need to be invisible. But Leonardo didn't want to break in. He wanted to walk in like he owned the place. And so he did. He rented an office in the same building, the Antwerp Diamond Center. He signed a lease, paid rent, attended client dinners. No mask, no weapon, just patience. And every night, after the lights went out, he studied the building. Security guards rotated on 12-hour shifts. Cameras covered the corridors, but not every angle. Some lights stayed on even after midnight, the perfect cover to move unnoticed. And inside his tiny office, Leonardo built what police later called the most elaborate heist model ever discovered. Blueprints, photos, and tiny replicas of locks hidden behind a fake ceiling tile. When detectives finally found it, they said it looked less like a criminal plan and more like an engineering thesis. I still can't believe he did it that way. Everyone trusted him. Security guards held doors for him. Vault staff joked with him. He brought chocolate to the front desk on Fridays. And when he occasionally visited the vault, escorted by staff like any legitimate dealer, he paid attention to everything. Which buttons they pressed, which lights blinked, how long the magnetic field reset after a door closed. Every glance was a note, every step a rehearsal. And outside, back in Turin, his team waited. A locksmith, an electrician, a safecracker, and a driver. Each one an expert in his craft. Each one unaware of the full plan. Leonardo called them artists. He wasn't exaggerating. The man who would later disarm heat sensors had once built miniature radios for the Italian military. Another could crack any lock by sound alone, just from the clicks of the tumblers. They were specialists, but Leonardo, he was the conductor. For nearly 2 years, nothing happened. The plan existed only in notebooks and late-night calls. Then, in January 2003, Leonardo told his team, "It's time." A diamond weekend was approaching, one of the busiest trade events of the year. That meant hundreds of dealers, constant traffic, and vault boxes filled to capacity. If there was ever a time to strike, it was when the vault was overflowing. He'd already tested the guards' habits. He knew the blind spots, the sensor delays, the door routines. And he had one last ace, a duplicate key, crafted from a hidden camera photo taken months earlier. The vault door was no longer a barrier, just another door waiting to be opened. He wasn't improvising. He was executing something years in the making. And that night, Leonardo locked his office for the last time. He packed a small bag, walked to his car, and drove into the dark. No one in Antwerp would see him again. Not the guards, not the dealers, not the city he'd studied for years. When he returned, the world would know his name. But not yet, because before the break-in, before the chaos, he had something far more dangerous than courage. He had a system, and no one saw it coming.
Before the world called it the heist of the century, it was just a quiet obsession. A man, a notebook, and a vault that refused to let him sleep. Leonardo Notarbartolo wasn't chasing money. He was chasing control. Every thief has a philosophy. His was precision. No guns, no chaos, just systems. If you could understand how a lock thinks, you could rewrite its rules. It's almost beautiful in a terrible way. In his apartment above the streets of Turin, Leonardo built a miniature of the vault. Exact dimensions, matching locks, even the same humidity level. He used cardboard, glue, and small bolts he scavenged from hardware stores. It wasn't about rehearsal, it was about immersion. He wanted his mind to live inside that vault, until every detail became instinct. He recorded each sound, the click of the latch, the buzz of sensors, the rhythm of the guard's boots. And then he timed everything, second by second. On paper, the plan looked insane, but in practice, it was an orchestra. Leonardo met his crew in public, always in motion, never staying long. They spoke in code. Lunch boxes meant vault boxes. Church meant the Diamond Center. And Sunday meant showtime. The crew was 5 men. The genius, a retired electronics expert who could bypass sensors using foil and polymer films. The monster, a lock specialist whose hands never shook, not even under pressure. The king of keys, a quiet locksmith who'd learned to cast duplicates using nothing but putty and a camera flash. The driver, nameless, careful, invisible. And Leonardo, the maestro. He didn't need to do everything himself. He just needed to make everyone else believe he had already done it once. If you want a miracle, we need to turn off God's eyes. He meant the sensors, the invisible lines of defense. Leonardo smiled. Then let's make God blink. That line became their mission, to turn off what couldn't be turned off. He lived 2 lives, and both looked perfectly ordinary. By day, Leonardo walked his dog, met with diamond brokers, and attended trade dinners. By night, he practiced, blindfolded. He'd lock himself in a dark room with tools, memorizing each movement by touch. The clink of metal became his music, the lock his metronome. And when he wasn't practicing, he was studying people, not systems. The guard who checked doors but never the ceilings. The janitor who left cleaning supplies near the vault. The manager who entered the wrong code once and triggered a reset sequence. Every flaw became an opening. He didn't break in, he adapted in. This wasn't burglary, it was choreography. Late one evening, Leonardo stood in front of the Diamond Center. Rain slicked the streets. The cobblestones glowed like dark glass. Inside, a lone guard walked his route, exactly as expected. Every motion was now predictable. Every sound belonged to the plan. "You sure this will work?" Leonardo looked up at the cameras, smiling faintly. "It already has." The next night, they would test the sensors without touching the vault. If the alarms stayed quiet, the heist was a go. They used a long wooden pole with plastic coating, slipped through a small opening in the basement, and waved it across the sensor grid. Silence. The heat sensors didn't react. Pietro grinned. "It's blind." The polymer film he'd created, thin as cellophane, could mask infrared signatures. They called it the diamond curtain. When wrapped around the sensors, it made them think the room was empty. They hacked the vault's vision using kitchen foil and patience. Saturday, February 15th, 2003. It was Valentine weekend. The vault was filled with stones ready for trade. Leonardo's crew entered the Diamond Center from a side door, one only authorized tenants could access. He used his duplicate key, timed perfectly to the guard's rotation. They moved through corridors like shadows. The elevator was shut down. They took the stairs. Down 2 levels, into the basement corridor. One by one, they passed through security barriers, magnetic fields neutralized with homemade tools, cameras looped with small mirrors reflecting still images, heat sensors blinded by the polymer sheets. No alarms, no noise. When they reached the vault door, Leonardo took a deep breath. He pressed his ear to the cold metal. She's been waiting. Speedy inserted the duplicate key. A click, a turn, another click. It opened. Behind that door lay $100 million worth of diamonds, gold, and bearer bonds, locked in 123 private boxes. For 2 hours, the crew worked methodically. No smashing, no mess. They picked locks cleanly, packed what they could carry, and left untouched what they couldn't. Then, Leonardo did something strange. He closed every box lid. He didn't want them to know what was gone. Not yet. By the time they sealed the door behind them, they had erased almost every trace, except one, a single half-eaten sandwich left behind in a moment of exhaustion. They loaded the duffel bags into the car. The streets were silent. No sirens, no alarms, no witnesses. For once, Leonardo allowed himself to smile. Pietro leaned back, staring at the glittering stones. "Do you realize what we just did?" Leonardo nodded slowly. "Yeah, we stole from the gods." They drove out of Antwerp before dawn. Border patrols didn't even look twice. To the world, the Diamond Center was still asleep, untouched. By the time the staff opened it Monday morning, the thieves were hundreds of miles away. Belgium's most secure fortress was now the site of its greatest embarrassment. And Leonardo? He was back in Italy, eating breakfast with his family like nothing had happened. He didn't talk about diamonds. He didn't talk about fortune. He just stared out the window, the faintest smile on his face. For a moment, he'd built a world that made sense. A system where every move was perfect, every variable under control. But control is fragile. All it takes is one mistake, one crack in the design for the whole thing to collapse. And it did. Because somewhere in that calm, in a forgotten plastic bag of trash dumped too soon, was everything that could destroy him. And that's when his perfect system collapsed.
It's strange how quiet success can be, right before it turns into noise. For 2 weeks, no one in Antwerp knew they'd been robbed. The Diamond Center carried on with its usual rhythm. Dealers shaking hands, guards on rotation, phones ringing. Everything seemed normal. Until February 17th, a vault tenant turned his key, expecting to find his diamonds, and found air instead. The silence that followed was heavier than any alarm. Inside, the floor was littered with debris, broken locks, ripped velvet pouches, empty boxes. The room that once smelled faintly of polished steel and perfume now stank of dust and betrayal. And the guards? They were frozen. They didn't even understand how someone could have gotten in. No forced entry, the cameras were clean, the locks intact. The vault, Belgium's pride, had been defeated without a single fingerprint. Investigators combed through every inch of the Diamond Center. They couldn't find how the thieves had entered, or who they were. No alarms, no melted locks, no broken codes. It was as if ghosts had walked through walls. Then came the first clue. A single piece of black plastic found on the floor, later identified as part of a sensor blinder, something that shouldn't have existed. The police began piecing together the method. Infrared sensors covered, magnetic fields looped, locks copied, everything neutralized with surgical precision. The lead detective called it the work of engineers, not criminals. And that's when someone remembered Leonardo Notarbartolo, the friendly Italian diamond dealer who had quietly disappeared right after the robbery. Back in Turin, Leonardo was already celebrating, quietly, privately. He didn't brag, he didn't spend, he just watched the news, half smiling when he saw confusion bloom across the Belgian headlines. For him, it wasn't greed, it was proof of mastery. But mastery doesn't account for accidents. One of his crew, Speedy, the impatient one, panicked. He'd been ordered to burn the evidence: gloves, foil, locks, and leftover food. Instead, he dumped everything in a wooded area near Antwerp, thinking no one would ever find it. He was wrong. A local farmer discovered a trash bag stuffed with evidence, and, buried inside, a half-eaten sandwich. On it, a bite mark and DNA. The heist that fooled the world unraveled because of a sandwich. When Belgian police arrived at Leonardo's apartment, they found diamond dust under his refrigerator. Tiny fragments, invisible to the naked eye, matching samples from the vault. He didn't resist. He didn't even flinch. "You think you caught me, but you'll never prove what I took." It wasn't arrogance. It was design. He'd never been seen inside the vault. No witness, no footage. And technically, he was right. The diamonds, the real ones, were never recovered. Not a single stone. Even under interrogation, Leonardo smiled through every question. The investigators couldn't tell if they were speaking to a criminal or an artist proud of his final piece. He didn't just steal money. He stole certainty, the illusion that security meant safety. The court called it the most sophisticated theft in modern history. Leonardo was sentenced to 10 years in prison, though no one could prove how much he had truly taken. His crew received shorter sentences. Some vanished entirely. Rumors spread that half the loot was hidden somewhere in Italy, locked away in an unknown vault, a perfect circle. When reporters asked Leonardo about the missing diamonds, he shrugged. "Maybe I stole them, maybe I didn't." It was theater, and everyone played their part. Years passed. The vault was repaired. New alarms were installed, but something fundamental had cracked, not just in the metal, but in trust. Insurance companies rewrote policies. Security firms doubled their protocols, and the name Notarbartolo became legend, whispered in the same breath as the great cinematic Thieves. A few years after his release, Leonardo gave an interview. He claimed he hadn't masterminded the heist alone, that someone inside the diamond world had recruited him, a shadow broker who wanted the job done for insurance fraud. Police never confirmed it, but the idea spread fast that maybe the biggest heist in history wasn't a robbery, but a cover-up. And like all great mysteries, it left everyone doubting which part was true. Remember that sound? That slow drip in the dark? The one echoing through the vault? It's still there. The same vault, rebuilt and reinforced, standing under Antwerp like a monument to human confidence. But if you listen closely, in that hum of security lights and metal doors, you can almost hear it breathing, the sound of obsession, the echo of control. Because in the end, the vault was never the point. It was the pattern, the routine. Leonardo's whole life built around precision, until the smallest human flaw, hunger, exhaustion, a single sandwich, tore it all apart. He spent years building a system that could outsmart anyone, except himself. The story of the Antwerp Diamond Heist isn't about greed. It's about how close control and collapse can sit, just one decision apart. Maybe the most dangerous place is inside a routine.